Alrighty, guys, gals, non-binary pals, welcome back to the channel. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. What's going on, John? You don't have a caterpillar on your lip anymore. I know, I shaved it off. Why? I don't know. I'm sitting down. Things are changing, okay? And we're moving along with the times, so I decided I needed to take a seat and just start to listen. So that's what we're doing today. This is stupid. Okay, also, I am recording this live, so if you think that this is fun and you want to come join, please come join my Twitch live streams. There will be a link in the description. Click on that. You can join. It's totally free. Today, we are going to be talking about a video. This video is, one, fantastic, so I highly recommend you guys check it out. There will be a link in the description of the video as well. The title of the video is The Full Story Behind Lindo Bacon's Downfall from the Fat Acceptance Movement. This video is from Funty Times, the YouTuber. They make, again, fantastic videos, but this is the video right here. A little bit about the video before we get into it. So if you are not familiar with Lindo Bacon, she does a good job of explaining who they are. But Lindo Bacon is an author of a book called Health at Every Size that was incredibly popular and still is very popular, and really did a lot of kind of the groundwork of what a lot of people know as the Health at Every Size movement. Now, before we get into it, they do show the book, and Lindo used to go by Linda Bacon, so if you're a little confused, that's why. And so, again, just to let you know a little bit of the background of the person that we are talking about in today's video. All right? All right, without further ado, let's get into it.
The fat acceptance movement arguably has many origins. Some say it's the NAAFA in the 1960s, some say it's the rise of Tess Holliday in the mid-2010s, but one of the undeniable drivers of the modern fat activism movement stems from one book, Health at Every Size, The Surprising Truth About Your Weight by Dr. Lindo Bacon. This book was first published back in 2008, and it was a huge success. And it's part of the reason you'll hear many fat activists to this day using the phrase health at every size, or HAES, to reference how they can, in fact, be obese and healthy. But
it's crazy to think that the book came out in 2008, because I know for me, I didn't start hearing about the movement really until, I would say, 2018 was probably when I started to hear about it, but 2019 was when it really picked up. And then during the pandemic, I feel like it kind of exploded, but that was my experience at least.
But in the past month, Lindo Bacon, one of the founders of the fat activism movement, was publicly dragged out of the movement they helped create. How did one of the faces of fat acceptance get publicly shamed out of it? All the drama started when one prominent fat activist that I only know from Twitter with their name as Mikey made a public post on their Patreon called, "I Will Never Work With You." Some of the intro reads, "To put it simply, even in matters of fat, the thinnest and whitest people, often under the guise of allyship, have benefited the most, socially, personally, and professionally. This has given thin allies a ridiculous amount of leeway to be, frankly, fucking horrible to fat people over the decades that this movement has spanned, as well as given them a certain cushion to protect them from being criticized for their gross conduct."
So basically, what I understand from this video is people are upset, not everybody, but the people in this video are upset with Lindo because they are a thin, white person and they are benefiting from Health at Every Size, which is kind of crazy to me because they were, I don't want to say they were the person that created it, because they definitely didn't create Health at Every Size, but they were definitely like one of the most forefront, like people that talked about it, you know? And gnarly.
What spurred me to make this post is that I had a series of interactions with someone, Lindo Bacon, who was the subject of this post, that was so ridiculously transparent in its disrespect and paternalism towards fat people and the stakes of fat activism that I felt the potential consequences of not saying something were much worse than saying something. This article is very long, and it outlines multiple interactions Mikey had with Lindo over the span of what I believe was a few months. The context of this first conversation Mikey outlines is that Lindo approached them to be a co-author on the next edition of the HAES book. This entire conversation is also incredibly difficult to read because...
So, a little bit of backstory. Lindo reached out to this person, Mikey, to be a part of their book, and Mikey was upset and we'll find out later that Lindo wasn't willing to basically give the book over to them. Hey, that's a way to get a new book deal. You know what I'm saying? All right. Yeah, great idea. Except the only thing we need to change is you need to leave and give it to me. Thank you very much. And we can move on now.
Because it was written like a stream of consciousness. So I'm going to paraphrase a lot of what was said in it. Lindo said, I have a feeling that we might be compatible in that way. But the main reason I want to call this person a co-author is because I really want to make sure they have an investment in the book. You would only want to put your name on something that you are 100% behind. Mikey responds, yeah. Lindo.
But, like, imagine responding to someone. I don't know. Maybe I definitely have a weird thing with how people respond to me. But if someone responded to that long of a text with, yeah, I would just say, you know what? Never mind. Clearly you're not interested. Because, I don't know, that's just me. But I cannot handle when people do that to me. Like, I cannot handle it. So props to Lindo here.
I don't want you to create things for me. I want to make sure this book represents you as well as me. Lindo stated earlier in the conversation that they wanted a wider range of perspectives on the book and that Mikey would be a good person to provide those perspectives. But during this conversation, they both realized that there was a wide difference in the direction of this book between Mikey and Lindo, because Lindo wanted to keep large chunks of the original Health at Every Size book, but Mikey wanted to make more changes. In this exchange, Lindo says, so again, I think there's a lot I want to be able to keep in this book. This is not a new book. This is a revision of an old book, which is important because if we did it as a new book, we wouldn't be able to capture all the people who are already devotees of the first book. Mikey replied, so here's where my hesitation comes from. As we've spoken about, there is a lot about the HAES paradigm that needs to be revised. Like, a lot. I have very specialized expertise that HAES needs, that the book that is rewritten will need. And if I'm remembering the original HAES book correctly, the revision in my head that I would be okay with putting my name on is drastically different. Lindo.
So basically what we're hearing here is Lindo is making like a revised version of Health at Every Size. Which, if you're not familiar with, like, book revisions, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm an expert because I don't freaking read. I can't read. I make YouTube videos, right? But from what I understand, that's a pretty normal thing to happen, especially with books like this that were made, 2008. It's been quite a while. So they make revisions to make it more modern, right? Those are things that we've all seen, textbooks and stuff like that. So that's what's happening here. But Mikey is literally saying, I disagree fundamentally with so much of this book that I would want to change so much. I just don't understand. First off, if I was both of them, I would say, well, okay, this obviously isn't going to work. Peace out. Like, I don't know why both of them are trying to make this work when it's clear they both disagree so much. But again, I'm not like other people, I guess. I don't know.
Lindo replies, okay, maybe this isn't going to work out. Mikey replies, yeah, I don't think this is. And Lindo says, there's no way I'm writing a new book. So they both had very different perspectives on
well, there you go.
what this book would look like. Mikey didn't want their name on a HAES book that didn't have sweeping changes, and Lindo didn't want to change the book nearly as much as Mikey did. Strictly speaking, they just had structurally different creative visions for this book. But then they get on to talking about the role of thin white people in the fat liberation movement. It would be easy to get writers that could give me that experience, but I also want someone to be the public face. We need to bring marginalized voices to the forefront. I find it very difficult to figure out, I want to step back, but it's not always necessary for me to step back in order for other people to come forward, Mikey replied, is that true? Lindo said, in my mind, yeah, it's true. Mikey replied, can you speak more on that for me? Because I disagree on a fundamental level.
Dog, this is so passive-aggressive. Why? Mikey is the one that shared this, right? Mikey is the one that put this out there. Mikey looks like a total dick, in my opinion. The way that he is if you truly disagree so much, just stop responding. Or just say, I'm not interested in this. Hope you find someone else. Or don't even say that. Just be like, yeah, deuces, not interested. I just don't understand why you would give the energy knowing that you don't want to do it other than to waste someone's time and just be a douchebag, right? At least in my opinion, again.
Lindo replied, because I think a lot of it comes down to how you're going to define power. Power is not a limited resource that you either have or you don't have, that there's a certain amount and it gets divided up. Look at how power can be shared. And I think it's problematic that we don't have more representation for marginalized voices, and that's in large part why the country is so fucked up. But the point is not that white people need to just give up. It's that we use the power to help, to be able to destabilize the power structure. Like you replied, yeah, I think there are sort of levels of allyship. Like the white trader is the person who, acts against the best interests of their whiteness, right? But there's not that many people working in this space. When I think about the power dynamics within those spaces and how recognition and notoriety and accolades and fame and money, etc., are divvied up among us who are doing the work, I don't think that it's possible for someone like you, especially who is very famous in this space, to not step back in order to make room for other people. Because power is distributed in a way that it coincides with the identities we hold, the privileged identities that we hold. And it's not that power is finite and should be spread more evenly. It's that power works in a way that sticks itself to people depending on their privileged identities. And your presence in the space does have the effect of a lot of that sticking to you. So they go into this small debate about...
So it seems like what I heard right there was literally what he's been waiting to say the entire time. I could almost guarantee that what was going through his head was, I don't care. I literally don't care what they say to me. Don't care what Lindo says. Don't care. This is what I'm going to say, so I'm going to say it now. He basically was waiting, asking those questions, yada, yada, yada. Okay, here you go. Yeah, what does that mean? What do you mean here? Oh, what's that? Blah, blah, blah. Wasting time and then being like, I'm going to drop this now. Boom, right? I could almost, okay, I can't guarantee, but that's, in my head, that's what happened there.
The role of thin white allies in fat liberation, with Mikey arguing that Lindo should more or less fade into the background, and Lindo saying that they should exist with a prominent voice as long as they uplift more marginalized voices in the process. The conversation continues with Lindo asking, what do you think would be best for me to do the next time NAFA calls me and asks me to do a keynote speech? And Mikey says, say no.
Thanks, Mikey, dude. You're freaking helping so much, bro. Dude, that commentary, so good.
I'm telling you, Lindo, fat people aren't asking you to speak because that would be their first choice. It's because you have accumulated the most social capital in this space. If fat people are asking you, it's because they think you're going to give them credibility. And I don't...
Right there. That stuff I cannot stand. A lot of people that are in this movement, they talk for other people. Don't do that. Why do you need to say fat people are doing this because of X, Y? You don't know. I'm sure there's tons of people that are like, yeah, Lindo Bacon really helped me. I really love what they have to say, and I'm super excited to have them speak at my event or whatever, right? But to say, no. They're not doing it for this. Trust me, they're doing it because, no, come on. How can you speak for someone else and say exactly what they're trying to, nah.
Don't blame them for making that choice, but that doesn't justify you saying yes. And then you being the one who just happens to be the privileged person that can go for things like that. It's not necessarily because of you, because they specifically picked you, because they see you as a safe, thin person, a safe, privileged person. It's just because you published your book and became the authority. And you are also a privileged person who seems to sympathize the most with their beliefs. Again, they're being held hostage. We never give other people the license to speak for ourselves when we're in good situations. That's not a thing. So I would say...
Being held hostage. For me, what makes sense is that Lindo Bacon made the book called Health at Every Size. So if you're going to have a convention that talks about that a lot, why would you not want to have them there? Where, I don't know, man. Sometimes it just goes so far. It's like you're being held hostage and you're causing violence against people. It's like, come on, man. Come on, dude. Chill.
No. And if NAFA was very intent on having you, that's a them problem to sort out, not a you problem to be like, yeah, I'm going along with. Because fat people don't always make the right decisions. We're being held hostage. We're doing the best we can. And Lindo replied, and my guess is NAFA would see that as a lack of support on my part. In this entire paragraph, Mikey is implying that Lindo's prominence in the fat acceptance movement is unearned, and Lindo should do their best to make themselves more scarce in the movement so that other voices can be heard, particularly more marginalized voices. All in all, I don't think there are any good or bad people in this conversation, just a differing of opinion when it comes to power structures and how the new book should be written. But all in all, nothing horrible was said by either person. So Mikey then summarizes this entire action, saying this: Lindo was disingenuous about the project having space for my ideas. They proposed the HAES rewrite as something that necessitated a major rework of HAES, when they were really just looking for a fat black person they could use as a pony show to point at as an example of how charitable they are with leveraging their privilege, as well as use to write complex, nuanced discussions of fatness, blackness, disability, and other axes of oppression that they could also take credit for. And when it became clear I was not willing to play the role they wanted to force me into, they pivoted to see if they could still purchase my expertise via a ghostwriting agreement that meant they could take full credit for my work without having to meet my needs as a co-author. This is on top of the fact that during the conversation, Lindo clearly articulated they have no intention of stepping out of the spotlight or relinquishing their power over the fat people they claim to advocate for, even when one of those fat people tells them very plainly that their continued hypervisibility is harmful. The reference to ghostwriting comes from a section of the conversation when they realized that they both couldn't co-author the book because of their differing opinions, but Lindo offered Mikey money to write a section of the book so they could still have their voice heard, but they wouldn't have to put their name on the book because Mikey clearly wasn't 100% behind the book. So I don't think that was an absurd thing to do on Lindo's part. So this entire interaction was spun as Lindo using Mikey as a fat black person for legitimacy instead of what by all accounts was a simple exchanging of ideas. But Lindo said multiple times that they wanted the co-author of the book to be 100% behind it, and coming to an agreement in the end that co-authoring wouldn't be a good idea due to differing opinions goes to show that Lindo seemed to have meant that. If they were just trying to use Mikey, they probably would have pushed the issue to get their token fat black person instead of respecting the difference in opinion and accepting that this collaboration just wouldn't work. Mikey also...
And a lot of this, what I think comes down to, and this is stuff that I've talked about in the past whenever we talk about health at every size, is that everyone in the movement has a different expectation and a different description of what health at every size is. And so this person might be health at every size and this person might be health at every size, but both of them believe very, very different things, but they still call themselves health at every size. And so we're seeing that, in my opinion, play out right here between these two people, right? I don't know much about Mikey. I don't know how prominent they are in the space, but I do know about Lindo, and I know they're a very big voice in this space. And even with that, there's so many differing opinions in that. And so it makes it hard for anybody that's trying to understand the movement. What is it about? Because depending on who you ask, it's going to differ on that person, right? It's going to their description of it is going to be different.
Also said, it became clear I was not willing to play the role they wanted to force me into. There was nothing in this interaction that suggested Lindo tried to force anything. Once they realized that both of them couldn't be creatively satisfied with a collaboration, they quickly gave up. This statement is such a huge misrepresentation of what happened in this dialogue. So then over the next few weeks or months, Lindo sent Mikey 2 more emails in which they talked a little bit more about this discussion they had had, and then offered Mikey the opportunity to collaborate on another project with them during NAFA Ally Week. This second email asked if Mikey wanted to be part of a panel to discuss fat allyship. Hi Mikey, NAFA is hosting Ally Week. As part of the event, they would like to host a discussion that helps people see differing views on allyship and want to specifically find people who have differing opinions, one an ally and the other fat. Without revealing your name, I told the chair I recently came up against this with a fat activist and could ask if they'd be open to participating. Want to do it? The deadline is tight. NAFA would at least like to know if you'd be interested by the end of the day Wednesday. And Mikey's response to this in the article was, after rereading this email for this post, the rage came.
Why would you think that's a good idea? Why? Just leave them alone, man. I don't understand. Just be like, yo, this person, we don't agree. We're not going to hang out or talk or be part of panels.
Came flooding back all at once. I never responded to any of Lindo's emails or messages after our first meeting. It is unlikely that I ever will. The reason for that is simple. How does one explain to a grown-ass adult that continuing to oppose collaborations to no response is, in fact, an answer? How do you explain to someone intent on making a spectacle of their self-awareness that they, in fact, have their head in their ass? And, most relevantly, how do you explain these very basic things to someone who doesn't actually care? That they are very clearly ignoring a very clear boundary because they are far more concerned with turning a no into a yes. How do you tell someone who doesn't recognize your humanity to treat you with basic dignity and respect?
So here, I will say, I think that Lindo, there's no reason to reach out at that point. I think that trying to make it work is silly. Do I think that it's okay to like put all this on blast? No, I think that stuff's always a little like I'm just not a fan of that. But I do think like I could understand being like, yo, stop. Like clearly I am not interested. Obviously, I felt like Mikey was pretty rude in how they responded to Lindo. But at the same time, I can understand being like, I thought it was clear. I don't want to work with you. So please stop. Right. And so, you know, I can understand being annoyed is all I'm saying.
This statement is so disingenuous and honestly infuriating. First of all, you didn't respond to a single email that Lindo had previously sent. That doesn't constitute setting a boundary. People lose emails all the time. So Lindo sending you this second email wasn't them crossing a boundary.
I agree with that. Being annoyed is different than they cross the boundary and they, I don't know. I was trying to think of a funny thing to say there.
Second, this whole they're trying to turn a no into a yes doesn't even make sense. The no Mikey originally gave was for the book Lindo was co-authoring. This offer in this email was for a completely different event. You never said no to this offer, and you also never clearly stated that you didn't want any collaboration with Lindo ever. And from my outside perspective, it seems like Lindo was trying to help you out professionally by providing this opportunity for you and showing respect for your differing opinion, because the panel on allyship would have been directly related to the conversation you had previously had.
That's actually a good point, and honestly kind of against what I had just said. I watched this video once, so I'm not an expert on everything that is said. For me, I guess where I'm coming from is I am very sensitive to how people respond to me and how they message me back, right? So if I was in the position that Lindo was in, it would be very clear, at least to me, I think, that this person doesn't want anything to do with me. So I know for me personally, I would not message that person again to try and make something happen. But obviously not everyone is like me, but that's where my mind is coming from when I'm saying that stuff, right? It's like if someone is responding to me the way this person was responding, kind of rude, a lot of times very short, I would be like, okay, I'm not going to message that person again because they obviously don't want to talk to me. But that might be my own, personal biases and stuff like that.
So they wanted your voice to be heard. And this entire very long article ends with Mikey sending an email to NAFA in response to Lindo's offer, basically saying that they are a performative ally and that NAFA shouldn't work with them anymore. And it ends with, "In fat solidarity, Mikey." So this is the article that set off the Lindo-Bacon drama. The other flashpoint of this drama came on April 10th, when the AHDAH, Association for Size, Diversity, and Health, came out with a statement entitled, "Holding Lindo-Bacon Accountable."
I've decided I'm going to start ending all my emails with "in mullet solidarity." That's my new thing.
And this article is even more wild than the last one. So
yeah, like we haven't seen anything yet. It gets crazy, man.
The entire article shows email correspondence between Lindo and a representative of the organization. The first
this legit is like an inside job trying to get rid of Lindo. It's wild. Right? And I'm not even a fan of Lindo, by no means, okay? I want to make that clear, right? Sometimes, hey, you get what's coming to you know what I'm saying? But geez, bro, remind me never to get into this movement because they do not play and they will take you down. And they will work coordinated to make sure that happens.
The email is long, but I have to read all of it for any of this to make sense. Hi. As you know, it's disturbing to me, and perhaps to you, that my book entitled HAES is sometimes people's first introduction into HAES, though it introduces an antiquated version of HAES. As I wrote on my website, as proud as I am of this book, I'm also aware of its shortcomings, including some of the ways it transmits my unexamined privilege and does damage. I would like to write an updated 15th anniversary version to be published in 2023, so that I don't continue to do this damage, and I'm able to put on a more modern perspective. Before I dive into this project, I want to run it by you. I want to know if there are any concerns or anything you would like to discuss. It's important to me to include acknowledgments, as I did in my previous book, and it's not a definitive version of HAES, and that I'm not the founder of HAES. I think the earlier editions were quite successful at getting HAES on the map, and the next edition would further that, and also serve to bring attention to the organization and expand the organization's reach. Perhaps the organization would consider writing a foreword, though I don't need a commitment at this point. The concept of health at every size has a long history that predates me and includes many diverse viewpoints. I am grateful to the pioneers who helped us envision the possibilities of a paradigm shift and to the many other freedom fighters who continue to conceptualize and grow the movement to this day. Do you have any thoughts about me going forward on this project? I'm happy to discuss anything and available by email or Zoom. Lindo then got a response about 2 weeks later that said, "First of all, I'm so appreciative of the work that you have done to put health at every size on the map. Your book, which I first learned about over a decade ago during grad school, was my first introduction to HAES. Despite its limited perspective and shortcomings, your book had a profound impact on my personal and professional life. Since my first introduction to HAES, my own understanding, fat politics, and social justice praxis have grown and evolved immensely. I'm sure yours has too. And so my questions to you are, as an ally or accomplice of social justice movements, have you considered passing this opportunity along to any of the BIPOC, fat, disabled, lower socioeconomic status, etc. folks who are doing this work and whose voices need to be centered and uplifted? Have you considered just letting that first HAES book go out of print publication so that new voices who are deeply impacted by fat hatred could be ushered in? Had you considered the other ways you could give some of your privilege and power in order to create a more equitable and just movement? If you write this book, regardless of updating it in a modern perspective, you will be perpetuating harm by centering the experience and perspectives of a relatively affluent, thin, straight-sized white person. Sharing this singular perspective of HAES at this moment in history will drown out the voices of those with lived experiences of being fat, black, indigenous, Latinx, disabled, etc. Their voices are divergent viewpoints the world needs to hear. Additionally, if you write this book, it may bring attention to the organization, but I doubt it will expand the reach to communities and the people who want to be the center of our work. The organization and the larger Health at Every Size movement historically has been and currently is overwhelmingly white, thin, affluent, and otherwise privileged. If the organization is to survive and thrive, to be a leader in this social justice movement, we cannot have more of the same. I look forward to getting the team's feedback and discussing this with you further. Thank you, Veronica." Honestly, the nerve.
Bro, okay. I wanted to let that get all read out before I interrupted because I know that it can be annoying. But it's literally basically at the end. So it starts off really nice, obviously, but towards the end of the article, they basically say, "Yeah, don't write this. You're not allowed to." And it's just so wild to me. It's like you are not allowed to be part of this movement anymore. And then they say, which I think is really interesting, they say the Health at Every Size movement is full of basically thin white women. And I'm like, I wonder, there might be a reason for that, because maybe there's a lot of people that are bigger that don't agree with the Health at Every Size movement. And maybe they don't agree for a good reason. But it's like, that's never the thought. It's like, no, we need to get all the thin white people out. We need to just get all the thin people out. It's the only people that are allowed to be in it are fat people. That's it. I don't know, man. It's just
of some people. This entire email was basically saying, we don't think you should write this book and you should give the opportunity to someone else. But first of all, publishing deals don't work like that. Lindo wrote the book. They can't just give the rights to write another edition of the book to someone else. That's not how it works. And second of all, how disrespectful is it to treat someone who, by your own account, put your movement on the map like they should just fade into the background? Sure, you could have some criticisms about how prominent they are, but to tell them that they should just let their book go out of print because they take up too much space seems incredibly disrespectful, especially when they are offering to rewrite the book with a wider range of perspectives, which is exactly what the organization claims they want. Lindo then responds to this email a week later saying, "Sorry it's taken so long to respond to your email. I'm glad my first book was meaningful for you. The rest of your email did not land well. I'm going to take a pass on responding to your questions or engaging. I wrote my initial emails to get more information so I could make the most reasonable and respectful decision, and I did get what I needed from your response. Thanks. I look forward to hearing your opinion from the board as well. Lindo."
They said, "All right, peace out, dog. I'm not doing this. Thanks for nothing."
So the organization didn't respond to any of Lindo's other emails for the next 5 months. Okay, this email was sent October 7th, and the next response Lindo gets is at the beginning of March. So they waited literally 4 months to respond to Lindo again, but Lindo sent multiple emails in that time. Lindo sent a follow-up email on October 20th and said, "Hope your week is going well. You had written previously, I look forward to getting the team's feedback and discussing this with you further. Do you have a sense of when that might happen? I need to move forward in making decision, and my publisher needs this too." Fast forward a week later, Lindo sent, "I'm meeting with my publisher on Tuesday to discuss the possibility of a new edition of the book. Please let leadership know that if anyone has any feedback that it may be helpful for me to discuss with my team. I encourage them to get in touch. Thanks."
Dog. I could never do emails like this. I could never do it. Just, if you don't respond to me in a few weeks, I'm like, all right, well, we're never talking again. I'm not a businessman though, so.
Lindo sends another email in January saying, "No response necessary. I get frequent requests for interviews and speaking gigs and often try to refer them out to others. Today I got a request that I thought might be a good match for you. It's a prominent podcast and might be a good op to the world about the organization and the work that you do." Basically, this entire email was Lindo saying, if you need help getting speaking gigs or into podcasts, etc., I can help you. Just give me this information. So then finally, the organization responds on March 4th and says, "Hi, Lindo. Thank you for your patience in awaiting a response. I'm currently not taking personal business media requests, but I and other folks on the team would be happy to speak on behalf of the organization in print, interview, podcast, videos, and speaking gigs. Thank you for your consideration, Veronica." Then on March 8th, Lindo gets sent this email. "Please find the attached leadership team's response regarding a revised Health at Every Size book. All future correspondence should be sent to me directly." To Lindo, in your initial email correspondence with Veronica, you wrote, "I would like to write an updated version of the HAES book to be published in 2023 so that I don't continue to do this damage and I'm able to put out a more modern perspective. The organization's leadership stands behind Veronica's thoughtful response that publishing an updated version would do harm and damage to the community by continuing to center thin, white voices in the movement. The organization's leadership does not approve of or agree with you moving forward with this project. We at the organization, the holder and protector of the Health at Every Size and HAES trademark, are committed to promoting an inclusive vision of health at every size, which centers those most marginalized and harmed by fat phobia and the healthcare system. Your authorship of a revised Health at Every Size book will cause confusion with the organization's work promoting health at every size. A Health at Every Size book will be reasonably interpreted as the organization's opinions, violating our trademark. In addition to the potential harm of publishing a HAES book, we would like to address the harm that has already been done in your interactions with Veronica, the leadership team, and the community at large."
Okay, so this is important. What they are saying, so at first they started with, "We don't want you to write this book." Okay, that was basically all that they were saying. I'm trying to dumb this down as much as possible. It's hard for me because I'm not very smart, so I'm trying to learn as well, okay? But basically what I understand is they said, "We don't think you should write this book. It's a bad thing, and we hold the trademark, so go F yourself," right? But now they're going to go further, okay? So that's important. So at first they said, "We don't want you to write the book," which, again, I think is ridiculous, but that's whatever. They're going further now, so that's important.
At the organization, we're interrogating how white supremacy culture shows up in our work, organizations, and community. In your interactions with Veronica, you demonstrated white fragility, white supremacy culture, and performative allyship. We invite you to this brave space and to recognize that while intentions may be good, harm can and did happen. Actions that caused harm. Calling Veronica by the wrong name multiple times. Yeah, you did do that. White fragility.
That is... I wonder if they did that on purpose. What's up? I don't remember, Victor?
You have stated that you are committed to anti-racism. Despite this, when provided earnest feedback, you have been dismissive and defensive, and you have refused to engage in generative discussion. Performative allyship. By asking for input and then summarily dismissing it, your request for feedback was performative. When you didn't get the response you wanted, expected, and believed you were owed, you went ahead as planned anyway.
So basically saying right there, it's like literally you can't have an opinion, right? So if you asked a question and you disagreed with maybe the answer, you're not allowed to. You're not allowed. Come on, dude.
White supremacy culture. Sense of urgency. Not giving your expected timeline, then sending emails asking us to rush and adhere to your timeline. Power hoarding. Choosing to be complicit in the status quo of the publishing industry instead of bringing in and uplifting new voices. Fear of conflict. Dismissing the questions Veronica posed. Individualism. Taking actions if you alone have the power and responsibility to write a book on health at every size. What the f***? How are these white supremacy culture? Having a sense of urgency is not...
I'm gonna say it, and it's I'm not trying to bring politics into it. Like I'm a pretty left leaning person, but dog, stuff like this is what makes so many people not want to say that they are, because it makes it seem like everyone's this freaking ridiculous. I don't want to be associated with that. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? One, you're not allowed to write the book, and here's all the reasons you've harmed me from our past emails. Jesus, dude.
Not white supremacy. It's just basic professional courtesy to respond to emails within an allotted amount of time, usually a few days. This leadership team has been generous with their time, talents, and knowledge in responding to your requests with little evidence that you're willing to engage in an accountability process. If you wish to continue to engage in further conversations, we will need to do so as consultants where we are paid for our time. In closing, we are...
They said also, we need some money. You can't write the book. Also, can I get $5?
unequivocally unified in opposing a revised edition of Health at Every Size written by you. It will do harm and will not uplift the nuance and inclusive use of our trademark as intended. So at the end of the article, there's this section that asks, why didn't the organization respond sooner to Lindo's request for a leadership team decision? And the response was, if you are asking yourself this, take a moment to first consider the white supremacy thinking that leads you to question the timeline of events over the substance of the interaction.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? You sound crazy right now. You know that, right? Asking, why did it take you 5 months to respond to an email? And then responding with, well, that's white super. Are you kidding me? 5 months. I'm using this now. If anyone gets mad at me for not responding, I'm going to say, you know what? You're a white supremacist. How does it feel? You Nazi? Telling me to hurry up. I'm going to take my time. Oh my God.
No, I won't do that. But I will question why your organization is so unprofessional that it took you 5 months to respond to an email. That is what I will question during this interaction, okay? Lindo did not
I'm not lazy. You're a white supremacist. Thank you very much, okay?
provide a timeline in which to make this decision. This sense of urgency, not providing concrete information on their desired timeline, and not explaining why the rushing was important to them, is a tool of white supremacy culture to force an answer quickly before the responding party has time to fully reflect. Lindo sent 3 follow-up emails, all within the month of October, from beginning to end. That isn't a sense of urgency. That's just saying, hey, I haven't gotten a response. It's been a few weeks. Do you have any new information for me? I'm pretty sure a month is more than enough time to reflect. And to imply...
Hey, man, I read pretty slow. But I can read an email in at least probably a week, you know? Doesn't take me a month, at least a week. Just saying, you know, I never thought I could flex that, but apparently I can, you know? It only takes me about a week to read an email. Thank you very much.
That it's white supremacy to even expect a response within a month kind of undermines the intelligence of people of color to be like, you can't expect us as non-white people to respond to a 1,000-word email in less than a month. How are we going to have time to fully reflect on all those words? During this time, we also took time to meet with our legal team, considering the consequences of our responses and actions, and writing a thoughtful letter to address the harm done. So they were meeting with lawyers during this time. So then there's the section on community accountability. In the last communication with Lindo, the team invited Lindo to a community accountability process. We asked Lindo to cover the financial costs of the labor of a facilitator and the team to engage in this process. Lindo has already cost the organization considerably financially and emotionally, taking resources away from our advocacy work in the community and causing harm to the team. Community accountability requires many things. The first thing is an existing relationship. Lindo does not have a strong relationship with any individual on the current team, nor has Lindo supported or participated in the organization's work materially or meaningfully in the recent past. Engaging in community accountability with Lindo is a risk for our leadership team, which is another reason we're asking Lindo to financially support this process. This entire section on community accountability is really sketchy. The main thing it says...
They're just making things up, man. You just make up words, and you say there's some sort of damage, and trauma. And there you go. And then at the end you say, so because of all that, I would like $5.
In these 3 paragraphs is, we want Lindo to give us money to heal the harm, allegedly, but it all seems very coercive to say, what you have to do to make up for the harm you've done is give us money, because you haven't materially contributed to us a lot in the recent past, and we think you could make up for it by providing us with some money to recover from this harrowing process. To say that the only way you can get on better terms with us is to provide us with money, especially publicly, is very strange. Seems highly manipulative and not like a normal, reasonable request when harm is done, especially when that harm wasn't financial in nature. They'll say that a lot of financial work.
It's super manipulative, and I mean, the reason that it's so manipulative, at least to me, is because if Lindo does not respond the way that they want them to respond, they're just going to say, oh, see, you didn't even have any intentions on actually listening to what we have to say. You 100% had no reason, like, you only want to reach out to us because you want to use us for XYZ. So it's like, literally, there's it's a no-win situation, right? 0% win situation.
Went into this entire interaction to begin with, but all in all, it was just responding to emails. You can't require someone pay you back because you had to respond to some emails and then meet with your legal team, which it's not their fault that you decided to get legal representation after these interactions. So that was the gist of this article. But I skipped over a section called Summary and Analysis that breaks down all the ways Lindo has done harm to the HAES community based on this interaction, and there are some stark contradictions between what was written in this section and the first article written by Mikey that sparked this whole drama to begin with. 1. Lindo does not gather community input or help shape the discourse of future HAES. They run their business as an individual for their benefit. This point is blindingly hypocritical. First of all, the entire email correspondence that they posted started with Lindo asking for their input on the updated version of their book, because in their own words, I am also aware of the shortcomings of the book, including some of the ways it transmits unexamined privilege and does damage. So they themselves acknowledged the shortcomings of their previous work and actively reached out to your organization to get input on improving the future discourse of HAES. And not only that, but the original article written about Lindo by Mikey starts out with a recollection of how Lindo reached out to a self-identified fat black woman to get her perspective for the book. So on multiple instances, there is evidence that directly contradicts this point. Lindo expressed no intention of including others in authoring the book when they contacted us. Veronica's first point in her response was whether Lindo considered including other voices. Lindo dismissed Veronica's feedback, yet still used her labor to further their individual goals.
That's obviously a lie, right?
This is also such a bad misrepresentation that I'm almost tempted to call it a lie. First of all, this entire...
Oh, sorry, I already did that.
article was released and presumably written after Mikey's article was published. So whoever wrote it definitely knew of how Lindo sat down to talk to Mikey about co-authoring the book with them. So to say that Lindo didn't consider letting other people co-author is such a twisted way of framing what actually occurred. They're just saying in this point that Lindo didn't mention it in their first email, not that it didn't happen, because it did, and the person who wrote this almost certainly knew that. Lindo's email initially did
This whole thing gives me, like, you can't sit with us vibes. That's what I get from it.
not include elements of our goals for the organization presented at the annual meeting. These goals were then reflected in communications with Mikey, co-opting the vision and leadership of Fat Black Leader and the diverse leadership team. These two sentences are such a contradiction on their own that it makes me want to throw my computer across the room. The first sentence is meant to negatively criticize Lindo for not including the organization's goals in the email, but the second sentence negatively criticizes them for including those goals in another email, which, by their own words, is co-opting the organization's vision? So what do you want?
It seems like it's just literally doing everything they possibly can to make Lindo leave. Like, that's like it feels like Mean Girls, right? Just being mean, trying to be mean and rude and make the person leave. Like, that's what this feels like, which is wild to me.
Also, I don't know if I'm even reading this right, because These sentences, specifically the second one, was written so poorly that I don't actually fully know what they're saying. Though Lindo knew the organization's goals for health at every size, they continued to move forward on their book instead of using their resources to support and follow the lead of fat, black, brown, disabled, transgender, and queer leaders of the organization. The summary of this point is that we told them we didn't want them to write the book, and they said they were going to do it anyway, and we don't like it. It's not up to you. It's not your book. But they did ask for your input, though, and you refused to give it. Lindo continues to run HAEScommunity.com, which supports their hoarding of power in the HAES space. This keeps community resources in Lindo's hands and diverts resources away from the organization and fat, black, and brown advocates. Lindo has not supported the organization materially besides the base annual membership fee in recent years. These points, along with the one I already referenced earlier when the organization said that they ask for financial compensation for...
I'm just getting jealousy vibes now. That's what I'm getting. We're jealous. Let me get some of that cheddar. You know what I'm saying? Literally.
Their labor are so manipulative. It all just makes it seem like the organization is very bitter that they don't get as much money and notoriety as Lindo does. And they are trying to...
11 months, man. I remember watching your vids in HS when I weighed up to 420 pounds. Now I'm at 270 and still going. Love your stuff, obese at one love.
Thanks, Dallas. I appreciate it. Welcome back. And 11 months, dude. Almost at a year. That's lit.
Legally okay way for me to put this. They are trying to forcefully convince Lindo to give them money. Essentially, we do a lot of work in this space, just like Lindo does, but they make more money. So we would like our cut, please. All of this makes it seem like the organization dislikes how much money and notoriety Lindo makes off of HAES. Super sketchy and very petty. The strangest thing with all this drama is how many contradictions there are between the main sources that have driven this controversy. Mikey said that Lindo reached out to her to try to co-author a book to provide a wider range of perspectives for the book. But then Mikey turned around and said it was wrong to use her specifically because she's a person of color. But when Lindo reaches out to the ASDAH to ask for their perspectives, they get angry because Lindo is white with a limited perspective and needs to give more voices to marginalized people. Is that not what they were trying to do when they asked Mikey to co-author the book? It should also be noted that in the timeline of events section in this article, they reference the release of Mikey's original article. So they absolutely knew that Mikey had been asked to co-author the book. And since these two articles have come out, a bunch of people have jumped on the Lindo Bacon hate train, writing their own think pieces about them. There are now so many articles coming...
Bro, this person, Fat Dr. UK, let's see. We need to go back.
They reference the release of Mikey's original article. So they absolutely knew that Mikey had been asked to co-author the book. And since these two are...
Anything this person says, you are probably good. Okay, I think this is a fact, okay? Anything this person says, Fact Doctor UK, anything they say, if you decide I'm going to do the exact opposite, you'll probably do very well. I'm just saying, okay?
Articles have come out, a bunch of people have jumped on the Lindo Bacon hate train, writing their own think pieces about them. There are now so many articles coming out of people saying they knew Lindo was terrible all along, and they're glad that Lindo's finally being exposed. And maybe in private, Lindo is a mean person, I don't know them. But from all the correspondence I've seen in all of these articles, there is nothing to suggest anywhere near the level of scorn I've seen Lindo receive. Now, up to this point in the video, it may seem like I'm defending Lindo. And in a lot of ways I am. They certainly didn't deserve all the hate they've gotten.
It's interesting because you hear similar stories from people that were not even prominent in the health at every size movement, but they were just like part of it, right? Someone that we've had on the channel, Megan, she was into the health at every size movement, and then when she talked about, maybe wanting to lose weight or she was having issues with her weight, she got just completely excommunicated. It was like, how dare you? You're kicked out, right? And so it's like that happening just on such a larger scale because Lindo is such a big voice in that space, but it's literally the stuff that we see from the movement with anybody that starts to even disagree a little bit, right? This is what happens. We've seen this happen time and time and time and time and time and time again.
But I also don't feel bad for them. At all, really. Lindo has spent the last decade using their credentials to give legitimacy to the extreme sides of the fat acceptance and HAES movement.
Hi, I'm Dr. Linda Bacon, and I'm devoted to creating a global transformation that focuses on body respect, not the war on weight. My work is inspired by lessons learned through 3 graduate degrees in weight science, including a PhD in physiology, as well as clinical and research experience.
When the HAES book was originally published back in 2008, I believe Lindo had good intentions. But somewhere along the way, it seems like they realized they could make more money using their doctorate and the label that came with it to engineer an entire movement made to spread misinformation, indoctrinate vulnerable plus-size women, while also increasing their own wealth and notoriety.
This happens, I mean, one, facts, but this happens in the amount, especially in America. Like, I feel like this is a pretty American thing, but I feel like it's a pretty American thing to use a doctorate or just surname or whatever, doctor, to use that prefix, I think. Not smart. I'm not a doctor, clearly. But to use that as a way to say all of my views are obviously very smart because I'm a doctor, right? Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, he is the worst. But like this is something that we see so often, right? A lot of the keto doctors, Dr. Berg, Dr. Fung, all of these people, they use the term doctor as a way to legitimize things that they say, right? What I do is I use YouTuber, and that is a way for people to know that you shouldn't trust anything I say.
So watching them be pushed out of the movement they created by the very people they helped indoctrinate, and using the same backwards logic Lindo used to create this movement to begin with, is not something I will mourn. In fact, I feel a bit of schadenfreude about the whole thing. But this entire situation should be worrying to the fat acceptance movement, because this type of behavior in a social movement is not normal. The fat acceptance movement likes to compare itself to other groups like Black rights, LGBTQ+ rights, disability rights, etc. They named their original organization NAAFA, for Christ's sake. You can't tell me they weren't trying to copy the NAACP with that one. But normal activism groups don't function like this. In many groups that advocate for racial minorities, particularly Black people, there have always been discussions about the role of white people when it comes to making money off of educating on minority issues. Back in 2020,
That's what's so weird about this, is that regardless of how deep you are in the health at every size, and I know that people say, like, well, because fat people of color have been most marginalized. But like, when the name of the movement is health at every size, it has nothing to do with the color of your skin, right? Your ethnicity. It has nothing to do with any of that. So it makes sense for someone to be very confused as to, we were talking about health at every size, but now we're talking more about things that have nothing to do with your size. It is very jarring.
The book White Fragility took off in the midst of the Black Lives Matter rallies, and the book's author, Robin DiAngelo, made a lot of money touring and giving speeches talking about the contents of her book to predominantly white audiences. She's gotten some criticism because it's unfortunate that a white woman can make so much money talking about experiences that aren't hers because people will listen to her more than the minorities whose stories she's telling. But even so, the vast majority of Black advocates see her work as a net positive for the movement because they understand that even though Robin benefits off of telling Black stories and Black experiences, having those experiences shared with a wider audience still does benefit the movement as a whole.
But even if they didn't, right, this is where my mind is. Even if that wasn't the case, it would make so much more sense to talk about race when the book is called White Fragility and the whole book is talking about race. Health at every size is about your size. So if the main reason was we don't want Lindo doing it because they are not fat, that was the main thing, I would think it's ridiculous still. But it would make a lot more sense in my small YouTuber brain, is what I'm trying to say.
And this situation is almost identical to the one Lindo is being criticized for. Taking up too much space in a movement that they aren't a part of, as in, Lindo isn't fat. And while there could be some criticism to be had on this type of dynamic, if you truly believe fat activism is a valid social movement, there is no way to justify this level of vilification that Lindo has gotten for what advocates of other social movements have also done. And you can also see this type of dynamic in other groups. When it comes to racial and class disparities, some of the most seminal books written on the subject in the late 20th century came from a writer named Jonathan Kozol. He wrote many books in the 80s, 90s, and
That's Bernie Sanders, and you can't lie to me. I don't care what anyone says.
even into the 2000s about class and racial disparities in the education system all over the United States. He did this
I'm sorry, that was racist. I shouldn't have said that.
as a white man from a middle-class family who is extremely well educated. But he was never ousted from the movements he stood for simply not being part of the demographic he was fighting for. But Lindo was. The entirety of this drama around Lindo can be summed up in these 2 points. Lindo refers frequently to their contribution of success of HAES and the organization without equal and adequate acknowledgement of the success their book had because of already existing work of HAES advocates and fat liberationists. Lindo continues to run HAEScommunity.com, which supports their hoarding of power in the HAES space. This keeps resources in Lindo's hands and diverts resources away from the organization and fat, black, and brown advocates. These points make it clear that the organization is upset and the community at large is upset because Lindo and their books get more notoriety and make more money than the people in the organization do for similar work. And on top of that, Lindo isn't even fat, and the organization is fed up with it. But unlike other movements that have given constructive criticism to the people that, in a lot of ways, represent the group without actually being part of the demographics they're representing, the fat liberation movement did a complete 180 and decided to oust their movement's biggest ally out of what seems like sheer pettiness. And it's fascinating to watch.
I mean, this is stuff that we see in, like, you know, politics all the time, right? Like, one person rises to power and then there's a coup to overthrow that person, even though maybe a lot of the people agree with what that person said. Now they have these slight disagreements and they all come together and they get rid of them, right? That's exactly what's happening here. There's a coup in the fat acceptance movement, y'all. It's crazy.
And what's even more crazy is to see the amount of other people, particularly thin white people, that are piling on to the Lindo Bacon hate train in an effort to brown nose as hard as possible to the movement's leaders so they can continue grifting off of the people in the movement. These thin allies are out here virtue signaling as hard as possible while being ignorant of the fact that this thing that happened to Lindo could easily happen to them. One slip of the tongue, one bad interaction with a prominent enough fat activist, and Lindo Bacon's broken reputation will be theirs. It's quite a train wreck to watch. But after watching the whole thing, I can understand, objectively, where all this misplaced outrage comes from, or at least how it came to be. Because there are a lot of words that someone would need to read in order to truly understand everything that happened here. There have been very few, if any, videos made on all this drama, which is how people tend to consume their news. It's a lot easier than reading. So to actually understand what happened, you would have to read thousands of words. But it's the internet. Being impulsive, self-righteous, and outraged is a lot easier, and frankly, a lot more fun than doing your due diligence and reading the thousands of words needed to understand what happened with all of this Lindo Bacon drama. But like I said, I have very little sympathy for Lindo in this situation. As far as I'm concerned, they hired a bunch of people to dig their own grave and then push them in. Seems like a self-made problem to me. I hope Lindo made enough money off of all of this to kickstart their new career.
Whew. Well, that's it. Man. That I know that's a lot of information, and hopefully, I know I didn't interrupt too much and make it really hard to understand. But I think that this video is fantastic. Like, please go check it out and watch the original one. It might be easier to understand all the information. It'll be linked in the description. But again, like, it's sad, but it's not surprising at all, really. Especially like kind of what I said earlier. This is stuff that happens with I've seen this happen, and I've talked to people that this has happened to in the fat acceptance movement, or health at every size. When there's slight disagreements, bam, they're kicked out. And that seems to be what's happening with Lindo. But if you enjoyed the video, I would love a thumbs up. I would love to hear what you guys have to think. I mean, this is what we're an hour into this video now. So if you're still here, I mean, a thumbs up is the least you could do. You know, hook me up, help me out here. But yeah, I appreciate you so much for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.